And thanks for joining me. I am Tamara Scott. This is Truth for Our Time. We give you news that you can use. We help you when the headlines hit home. Living God's Word in today's world, because if He expects you to live through it, He's directed you how to do it. And so no matter what the issue is, there's nothing new under the sun. The older I get, the more I'm convinced of that. There is nothing new under the sun. So today, we're going to have a topic on Common Core. We've discussed that issue a lot on this show, and we're going to talk about it again today. And thank you for tuning in with us. We're powered by webcast1live.com. If you want to join in the conversation at any point, you may do so by dialing 855-244-0077, 855-244-0077, and we'll gladly fit you in the conversation where we can. We have 4 people in studio today, and I'm going to hop right to it. It is our 3rd January of the year, and hopefully you've got your resolutions. You are making resolutions. You are changing habits. And I understand the percentage of people who don't get their resolutions fulfilled. They break them. Start over again. Each day is a new day. Start over again and aim at that good, healthy practice of whatever it is you've decided to change in your life. What we're talking about today is what's healthy, what's good for your kids and for the future of the state and therefore the future of our nation. And it's Common Core. And joining me in studio, Heather Stanzel is here. Heather writes about Common Core, and you're an engineer. Am I correct in that?
Yes, I'm an engineer and analyst, yes.
And you studied the math aspect of it because of your engineering work.
Right. We're on the math watch list, the SINA list, our district is, so I was curious as to what exactly we were teaching. So I asked to read the entire curriculum, which is Common Core Line this year, and I read the 5th grade math textbook, reference manual for teachers, lesson guide, assessment book, as well as the math journal. I also went online and reviewed the videos they have for the actual algorithms. And to put it delicately, they're horrible.
That's pretty delicate.
That's not the original word I use, though. But as an engineer and an analyst, these are not appropriate algorithms to teach children if you want them to go into engineering, math, science, or anything related to that, like medical or statistics or research. They're teaching them all these kinds of algorithms that are basically, they look made up to me. They're not your standard algorithm. And the problem with that is when these children go home and have homework, parents cannot help them because these are not, and we're talking about elementary math here. So you don't have to be a professor to teach your child 4th, 5th, 6th grade math. We're fractions, multiplication tables. These are basic things. And parents are unable to help their children because these algorithms are odd. For instance, there's one that's called the partial products method. Another one is the lattice method. And all these are not able to translate once these children get into 7th grade. Once they get into algebra, they're going to be lost because they won't learn the traditional way of doing math.
So they're not, what I'm hearing, not being a mathematician myself, they're not building facts that build on top of each other. They're learning styles or methods.
They're learning methods, right. So, and there's huge emphasis on calculators as young as kindergarten.
And parents feel good about that because Johnny's learning how to use a calculator.
Well, I can tell you that calculators, while they're used for higher math, just for efficiency purposes, you still have to have a basic understanding of the basics, and our children are not learning that. And if you're giving them a crutch at that young of an age, when children are little sponges at that age, you are incapacitating them how to think for themselves as they get older. And they're not going to be able to go into those fields that are so important to our governor, the STEM fields. I want more engineers and mathematicians out there. We need that to be competitive. It's unfortunately, these standards we're actually lowering our standards for math.
And Dr. James Milgram has said that very same thing. He was on the accreditation committee. Now, I was going to go down the line and have you all introduce yourself, but I see Michelle over here nodding her head yes on the math not being where it should be.
Correct. And I'm just a mom. And I have 2 4th graders, twin boys, who are actually learning these methods in Adel. And my husband is an engineer, and it's hard when your engineer dad can't even help you with 4th grade math. And he has questioned the school with it. The kids very rarely bring these school books home. And when they are questioned to do multiplication, they have a very odd method where I don't know if anybody's asked their kids, no one is taught to memorize the multiplication table anymore at all.
Because we've got those calculators in kindergarten.
This is a huge issue. And to add on to Heather's point, what I've read about this is because we don't have the basis, a lot of other countries think that they're actually mocking the U.S. because they said this is dumbing it down, and we don't even have the basis to even be able to add on and to learn even further math. I have a fourth grader who literally breaks his pencil. And I started looking more into the math because I'm wondering, why are they not doing very well? And I know you've actually had on your show tomorrow that they've actually had a psychologist who says their brains aren't even wired to learn it this way nor comprehend. So it's not the student's fault, which they're made to feel it is. And I actually had the fourth graders are in two different tests, and they were doing a pre-algebra test. And the kids were pretty anxious about it, and one came home, and I said, hey, how did you do on your test? And he said, well, the teacher refused to hand it back out. 13 of us actually failed it, 7 of us passed, and only 1 scored 100%. So the teacher refused to hand any of the tests out and to go over it, and instead she said, we're going to retake the test tomorrow. And I said, what do you think about that? And he said, well, she always hands it out, and we always go over what we got wrong, so I know what I got wrong so I can learn. I did question the teacher on it, and she come to find out almost all of the fourth graders failed it. And the next day, my son went from failing to actually scoring a 96% on it when the test was given out again.
What was the difference? Why did he do so well?
They changed the questions to make it easier.
Because everyday jobs do that, right? Your bosses all do that. When you fail to meet a deadline, they just change it and there's no problem, right? Okay, well, also joining me is Kara Hadley.
Hello.
And Kara, you've had experiences in the curriculum portion of this. And I may not even know all the stories you all want to share, so interject. Like we're having coffee at the restaurant we usually meet and whatever you want to do. But Kara, tell us a little bit about the curriculum experience you've had.
In our school district, I've always kind of checked on their history because I'm really concerned about the correct history being taught, or at least an equal balance of everything. So I went into my older son's curriculum and looked at it, and there was a definite theme through the whole textbook. It was equality, opportunity, and another thing, but they really hit on the equality, and they really, like the whole book, every chapter has how slavery was, or racism is, or how women helped, or like in the World War II era, you have a whole chapter on what Latinos did, what women did, what African Americans did in the United States. So I compiled a bunch of that information and gave it to a website so they could put it out. Another concern I had is they really kind of glorified the sexual revolution there. And for
what age is
this? This is 8th grade.
Okay.
So they really glorified the sexual revolution. One of the big things was, not to get political about it, but how these new Democrats were fabulous, and they knew what was right, and the old white guys were wrong, and their parents were wrong. So, I mean, I could see a chapter like that when you're in 8th grade, when you're so impressionable, that they kind of, it influences your home life too.
Right.
Does
it really say that your parents are...
It says the old white guys and their parents were
It really
wrong.
does?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole main idea of this whole chapter, is that anyone that is older than you that might have experience in life is incorrect. And you, because you are revolutionary and you think differently than them, you are right.
Like we've got some enlightenment all of a sudden in this century that nobody's ever had before, Dark Ages, Enlightenment, all of that. We all of a sudden are blessed with something that nobody's ever gotten before. The same foolishness that we think that we now have this false separation of church and state. That all of a sudden, after years of standing on God's law and natural law and our laws, and through the 1800s and the 1700s, and now all of a sudden in 1940 and 30, we know better. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. The curriculum you're talking about, and we know that, and for those of you listening, let me be clear. We're talking to Iowans. This is local. So when you think about what you're hearing about Common Core on Glenn Beck or the radio shows, and you think, well, that's New York, because they are ahead of us. New York is dealing with some of this on a greater fashion, and they're giving us even more warnings. And we'll talk about those a little bit later today. but it's happening right here in your local school districts, your small local school districts. And if you're listening from out of state and you're thinking it's not happening in your state, understand it is. Even those states that were good enough to vote out Common Core, the Department of Education is now coming privately, bypassing legislatures, bypassing governors, and coming to the school districts themselves, offering monies through grants and trying to get into those school districts to get that curriculum in there. So, Karen, my question to you, was this curriculum, and in time we won't be able to see curriculum because it will be all computerized, which makes it even more difficult for parents to follow along. You can't follow along, see if your students in the book in the right place, if they're staying with the class, if they're getting the material being taught, what's being taught, and if the class is moving in an appropriate pace. All kinds of problems with this. Plus, what they're being taught could change with a click of a switch on computer, and you'll never know. This curriculum, is it aligned with the Common Core?
Yes, it is. And it's actually, when I did the research into it, it says it's NGSS and Common Core aligned, which NGSS is the Next Generation Science Standards. So they're kind of combining social studies and history and science into one class. And I had to get a password and a login number from my son to get online to look into this textbook to see what it was like. And as years past, I've just said, bring home your textbook. And then I got an email from my third grader's teacher that said, hey, we started our new science curriculum today. And I'm like, okay, this is kind of funny. So I email her back. I'm like, what was it? And she told me, and it was the third grade version of this TCI. And this, I think, is 10 times worse than the 8th grade book because it has that same kind of conflict with parents in there, but then it teaches them how to protest and to find environmental hazards in their community that they need to write like propaganda bumper stickers for. And I know it sounds crazy, but I have the book right here.
You do. You have it with you right here. Can I see it? Ryan, if I put it up, can we get a shot of it?
And it says it's Common
Core activities right there. Interactive student notebook. This is for third graders.
Yep.
And we're teaching third graders how to protest.
Yes.
Civil disobedience, third grade.
For third grade. I was kind of appalled because it seems innocuous. You know, you're sitting in your group with your little buddies and it's like, draw yourself and your buddies in this picture. And so, you know, they do that. And then below that, it says, draw a chant that you would chant at a peaceful protest. So my third grader is now supposed to come up with a chant that he is going to use to protest with. And then it says, fill in your signs that you will use to protest. I was appalled because they should be learning, you know, geography and things like that. But it just seems like it's not an education. It's more of an agenda. And even the 8th grade book, it wasn't really an education. It was more of an agenda. And I think it's sold to these school districts as aligning. And then when you go online and watch the video, it looks like a really fun, exciting curriculum. But then that's like the first 3 chapters are normal things, which is probably all the sample that you really get to see. Lessons are scripted with this. The teachers have scripts that they need to follow.
Right.
So they're not even able to teach. And, you know, if they're supposed to be teaching this and they think it's on the test, then they're going to have to teach to it because that's what all the tests have aligned to.
So when our elected officials say, oh, but Tamara, you can choose your curriculum. The schools have local control. Mm-hmm. What do we say to that?
Yeah, right.
To me, it would be like saying, and I don't know if I can get it over here quick enough, that you can bring in any notebook as long as it's, oh, you can't see it because it's the green, and in the green screen, it's green notebook. You can bring any notebook as long as it's green.
Uh-huh.
It has to be aligned to the Common Core. It doesn't matter they can choose whatever book they want, but it will have the same things taught to the test of the Common Core, or their kids will suffer on those measurements where the teachers are going to be measured.
And the problem with that, Tamara, is that I have asked the Iowa Department of Education if there are standards, if a school wants to choose a curriculum. Like, for instance, Saxon Math. They have a non-Common Core aligned mathematics curriculum with Saxon Math. If I wanted a child to choose that, how would a parent or how would a school make sure it's Common Core aligned to make sure the child tests appropriately? They did not have an answer for me. So there's no way, schools have no choice. They're not going to risk not having their children pass the tests if a Common Core aligned curriculum is not available. So that's why they're choosing this. The school districts have no choice. They don't have the time or the resources to sit down like I did and actually read from cover to cover the curriculum to make sure it's teaching what they want to teach. They're just going to read the first 3 chapters, like you said, and then buy the curriculum because they just don't have the time. And the Department of Education does not provide a way for districts to review curriculum to make sure it's Common Core aligned. So that's why we're doing that. That's why they're buying it. They have no choice.
Rick, I want to bring you into the conversation. Rick, is it lingual?
Langle.
Langual. Thank you so much. And you are here. I don't know, are you all telling your school districts or you're not telling your school districts? I don't want to give any information up that somebody doesn't want to give.
I'd be happy to. So I'm here representing a group called Stop Standards-Based Grading in Ankeny. So we are specifically for the Ankeny School District is we want to stop the standards-based grading implementation there.
And so for people who don't know what that is, what is it? Because schools and military are notorious for coming up for these terms, phrases, and acronyms that just keep us in the dark.
So if you understand what traditional grading is, traditional grading, you think of, the A through F scales, the 0 through 100 scales. You calculate your totals and average everything up for the end of the year. Standards-based grading says we should only report on what a student learns, and which that sounds great. But until you get into the details for how it's implemented, that's where the problems really start coming out, because what they start talking about is, homework is practice, and you don't grade practice. Practice doesn't count, so we should, we don't grade homework anymore. We should let students take as many retakes on a test until they learn it, until they get it right. Those sound good in principle, but what comes out of that is students don't learn good work habits.
Right.
They don't learn the good behaviors that they need to succeed in life.
Right.
So that's where we're at, is we're trying to oppose the implementation of this because of what it teaches our kids.
Because at that age, you're dealing with reward. What was it, Pavlov's dog? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
It is.
You behave when you get that reward. And, if you've ever trained a pet, that positive encouragement works so much. But if you know you're not going to get any detraction from your grade for doing homework, why would you do it?
Well, in the business world, in life, there's a reward for doing things right the first time. That's what you strive for. There's no redos on like a pharmacist. You don't want a pharmacist to get your prescription
Your third
wrong
prescription
the first
will
time.
be right.
Yeah, I don't want that. There's benefit to doing things right the first time, and there's no place according to this methodology that teaches kids that that's important.
There's nothing to strive
it's all
for.
where you get to at the end of the year, at your end of the learning. That's what's important. That's what should be reported.
Does this go back to that equality thing? Everything's fair. We don't want anybody to have a blue ribbon for first place.
Absolutely. It gets back to that. You don't want to hurt a kid's feelings if they don't learn things fast enough. You want to give them more time to achieve that learning, however much it takes to get there. They want to get everybody to proficient. Well, nobody has a common definition of what proficient
Right.
means, and then they can't tell you how to exceed proficiency. So those are the two other problems with this. Is you're teaching kids to be mediocre because they go on a 1 to 4 scale a lot of times, and saying 3 is the proficiency. That's what everybody wants to get, is a 3. It's really hard to get a 4. You can't achieve that top level of proficiency because they don't. It takes a lot to get there. Well, that's teaching mediocrity to these kids.
Absolutely.
Yep, and if you're pushing the everybody gets proficient, not everybody can be proficient on stuff. I stink at music. I can't play. I can't play instruments. I can't sing. I'm never going to be proficient at music. That's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with a D in music because I can't do it. Don't waste your time as a teacher on me trying to teach me things that I will never get. Spend more time helping everyone move the entire class forward. I'll keep up as best I can, but I don't need to be felt, you don't need to make me feel good by trying to make me proficient in something that I'll never be good at.
So instead of no child left behind, we have no child allowed to move ahead. Mm-hmm. That's basically what this is. No child will excel.
Everybody moves ahead at the same pace.
Well,
Which means nobody excels. It's back to that socialism that everybody's fair. Okay, so if people are listening to this, and this link can be forwarded on Facebook pages, people can listen to it whenever they like. How can people find you, get involved, and help make a difference?
So we have a website called stopsbg.com, and there's a petition on that site. It lists all our goals, it lists our objectives. There's a petition on there where you can sign up. You can add your email address, and you can get regular updates from us for information we get or events that are going on and ways you can make a difference.
All right. We've got to go to a break right now. I am Tamara Scott. It is Truth for Our Time, and I'm here with Rick Langle, Michelle Crystal, Kara Hadley, and Heather Stansel. I did pretty good. All right, we'll be right back after these messages. Stay tuned. It's Truth for Our Time, and we're powered by webcast1live.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershad.
I'm administrative manager
I am the senior technician.
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed rider it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed rider, it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
And I am Tamara Scott. You're listening to Truth for Our Time as we help you when the headlines hit home and actually help you live God's Word in today's world. And if that offends you, I'm awfully sorry, but that's what made this country great. So we're talking about Common Core. And one of the chat line, and I thank you for listening along and chatting along with us, Madwoman says, so should we train kids like dogs? Go be compliant. And I can't really tell if you're agreeing with what we're saying or disagreeing with what we're saying for your comment, but actually that is what Common Core does. You will either fall in line and be compliant, or you will be punished. And that's probably a great headline for somebody who's a writer, compliant or punishment. Comply or be punished, because that's what we're into. And I was just reading an older textbook, my great Uncle Glenwood's book. It was a math book. About this big. Not those big, heavy books we pack them in like mules on backpacks now and send our kids off. No, a little teeny book. You know, they had very few books back then. And it was fine print. It was not showy, no colored pictures, but it had some photos of mathematicians throughout the day who had done great works for math. And one, I think it was Abel, A-B-E-L possibly, but it was talking about how at age 12, he wrote some formula that greatly challenged people for the next 500 years. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, first off, you try that with Common Core, and you're going to be probably disciplined, certainly not rewarded, because that's not in the test. And we now know there's a great article out that China is finally figuring out its obsession with standardized test. When you test, You train followers, but you don't train leaders. You don't allow creativity, ingenuity, which is why America in the past, and Israel, with God's blessing, has had more cures, breakthroughs, innovations, creations, Nobel Peace Prize winners than other countries. Because of our freedoms, our liberty, fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. And this all comes back to, as David Barton said so eloquently at the family leader event, we kicked the Bible out of the school about 4 decades ago, and we continue to grope at anything to replace it. And we will continue to struggle. So whether it's Common Core, Vision 2000, Goals 2000, Parents as Teachers, No Child Left Behind, these are all expensive, corporate-minded education reforms. They are out to make corporations money, Bill Gates money, and if we didn't have proof of that before, the fact that Iowa's Association of Business and Industry, I'm hearing, is now lobbying in support of the Common Core, when surprisingly enough, the American Teachers Federation is stepping back from it. Teachers are stepping back from it because they're seeing the damage to children. Meg Norris, an Obama supporter, has been on this show and done interviews with me a couple of different times on the damage she saw, kids pulling their hair out, stabbing themselves with, it was another lady that we interviewed, had on video, saw that children stabbing themselves with pencils. We are offering our children no hope. If you believe that we were created in God's image, God is a creator. He is a producer. And we're stifling our children from being able to do that by this whole teaching philosophy. Now, I want to come back to the grading, and thank you for having my little soapbox there. I didn't know I was going to step up on it, but I did. Kara, thank you for being here. We've talked about standards-based grading with Rick. We've talked about it holding the top of the kids down. You want to come at it from the bottom up.
Yes. I also help out with the Stop Standards-Based Grading group in Ankeny. And a lot of the arguments we get from the administration about these kids that are questioning their grades is they're grade chasers, they're teacher pleasers. And these are the words that they will tell you when you walk in and say, I'm concerned about this. Well, I come at it from a different aspect. My son has a IEP, which is an individualized education plan in math and reading. He has had this IEP since 5th grade, and I had to fight to get him any extra help in that district. And I was watching him this year, and he's holding his head in his hands when he's doing what minimal amount of homework he has. He tries not to bring anything home. So, as a parent, you kind of know when something's going on with your kid. So I took him to get him tested, and I find out that he has a 5th grade reading level. And in 5th grade, he's about 5th grade for his math level as well. He is an 8th grader in Ankeny, but he is currently, I just got his report card and he has B's. Now, that would tell me that either their standards are really low or they just don't want to make him feel bad, which if, as a parent, I would want correct data. I would want data that says, unfortunately, your son is failing. We need to step in and do something else.
Right.
But instead of that, they don't want to make him feel bad. So he's getting B's. And, some classes he has A's in. He can't write a sentence. He can't punctuate. I love him dearly. And, currently we've pulled him out to dual enroll him so we can take him someplace else to get him remediated. And another thing that the administration says is that because of this grading system, children won't need to be remediated. Well, my example proves that totally false because he's had basically standards-based grading for the last 2 years, and he's gotten better grades than he's gotten ever, but he's not improving. He's, either stagnating or falling farther behind. So their argument's invalid.
And the worst thing you could do to someone is make them feel like they've achieved something they haven't, make them feel like they're prepared when they're not. And I really wonder, I'll have to have that, maybe the psychotherapist come back on with us that we've had before. When we see these acts of violence in the schools, we know that some of the behavior drugs may be a part of that, but I wonder if these kids frustrated. They know they don't have much of a future ahead. And I also don't agree with the exit exams. You've done all the damage you can to kids by not having them adequately prepared. Why send them out the door with one last insult that they're not ready on paper? It's not an exit exam. It's that we need to have better teaching all the way through. I'm going to throw out something that I heard at the State House, and you tell me what you think about it. we have to have the standards here at the state level, because at the school board level, these are just ordinary moms and dads. Somebody's kid didn't get on a ball team, and they're not chemists, so how can they pick a science curriculum?
Well, we have men and women in legislature that aren't legislators either.
Nor are they chemists.
Nor are they chemists.
In the Department of Ed, I don't believe there's
Nor
a chemist.
are they teachers, nor are they. And the thing is, I'm college educated. I don't consider myself stupid. We have people on our school board, agree or not on some of the stuff they do. Generally, they're college educated, and they want the best for their children. But we are hamstringing our schools. We're hamstringing parents. And I'm not even a parent. And I have a harder time than the parents do in getting information. It took me 3 months just to get this curriculum to read. And I don't have access to the online stuff. They won't give me that. But stop making excuses and let's get down to business.
Why wouldn't they give you all the online stuff? You're a taxpayer.
Why do I need it?
You're a taxpayer.
That is not a sufficient
Does
reason.
that frighten anybody else?
Well, I want to know who decides, who gives what standard. Who are you to say what my standards are in Adel? Who's somebody in DC to tell me what a standard is when everybody who's actually written these standards, none of them have signed off on them? They said it's an absolute disaster. And if I hear one more teacher say, look at where we are with Finland. Well, Finland, their test coming out, that's saying, on the ACT I scored a 30, but on the SAT I scored 1100. The two tests don't match up. And Finland only tests their top 3% of their students in their entire country. Let's take United States top 3, and let's take that same test. So these standards mean nothing. Standards are a benchmark, but it doesn't prove that you're learning anything, and it doesn't prove what you're learning is even correct. So standard is a word, rigor is a word, and we're rolling out to the entire United States public school system something that has never even been piloted on a district level, and we're rolling it out as a nation.
Our children are guinea pigs. Mm-hmm. And I don't have children, like I said, but that breaks my heart. These are our future leaders. These are our future congressmen, future presidents, our future. How can we do this to ourselves?
And the sad thing is, unlike a car or a popcorn popper or some material product, you can't recall. You can't call these kids back and reprogram. You'll just have generations of malfunctioning, non-thinking kids unless they can get that remedial work at their own expense, at the expense of parents. Dr. James Milgram, as we mentioned, said most of these kids coming out will not be able to go into a four-year college, a select college. At best, most of them will be going to the community colleges. Do any of you have any other comments on the school boards not being the right expert?
Well, and I think a lot of the school boards, they unpack look at these standards and they don't know what to do. So I think that's why they're going through and like the curriculum directors are like, oh, this says this aligns, so let's get this, because they don't know what else to do.
Part of it was put in at the State House too. So this is something I just found out last night, that the stuff that supports people going to standards-based grading, there's a clause put in one law, I think it was, when Culver was governor, that said something about schools need to report on student achievement or student learning or something like that. And I don't remember the exact phrase of it. I haven't found the law yet, but it's based in the law, and the law is worded just right to lead you down a certain path.
And on the school board note, our founding fathers said the best government is that which is closest to the people. Mm-hmm. You have the greatest recourse, and I still say that is the best. And now we know that I think the legislature handed over some of the authority they had in aligning curriculum. They handed over to either the Department of Ed or school board, state
Department of Education.
Department of Education.
Yeah.
And so, we're going to talk about the caucuses. Hopefully, we kind of just jumped into that. But Heather, you've chaired a caucus, and I want to come back to that before we quit and give people ideas. They need to go to their caucus. This is our children's future, and they can have planks. We can give them ideas for planks. We can tell them how to connect with any of us afterwards for ideas for planks. But if you don't go, someone else will be there and possibly not have the same concern that you do for what's truly best for your children. Along with what I'm hearing at the State House, they don't think maybe that there's the will to do anything about this, what would you all respond to that?
They don't think that they have the will, or that the people have
I
the will?
think that they have to hear from people to really, really understand the weight.
Well, people are doing what I did, and my story was I decided to stay local, and I just found out about Common Core, and I talked to my superintendent, and it's Adele's, it's Greg Defoe, and nothing went beyond him, and he does what the AEA tells him to do. He doesn't want to back them or not agree with them, but that means he does not get money. So when I got nothing from him, then I went to the State House. So people are probably staying in their back door talking to their teachers. The teachers are not pushing back on it. And I have been told off record that if teachers do speak out about it, they will be fired. They will be reprimanded. And these are in very large school districts.
Yep.
So people are staying local and it's going nowhere. And then when I get asked by my superintendent, have you talked to Jason Glass about this? This was our prior director. That is his response. Not that he will do anything about it. And he personally has been called by his own state legislator, and he chooses to do nothing. So people are speaking, but they're being stifled at the local level.
Well, and I know in Ankeny, an anonymous person that's in the district somewhere sent out an email telling parents that the teachers must have been starting to get questions about Common Core. Is this what you're teaching, and is this what's going on? And the administration told the PLCs at a professional development to go back to the schools and tell them that we are only using the power standards in Ankeny because those are the only board approved standards, when in actuality they're to say we're using the Iowa Core. But not to say we're using Common Core. And, I have a book right here that's in the Ankeny Community School District that says Common Core activities in it. So it's administration coercing teachers to tell parents untruths, which then what sort of job security does that teacher have when Ankeny is full of fabulous teachers that they just need to know that, you know what, we'll back you. You want to stand up and you want to speak, fine, let us know. We'll be there.
And, well, let me just read out of this book. It's Common Core, a Trojan Horse for Education Reform. And if you want to get a copy of this book, and I think Orlean Coley has another book coming out, but you can call the publisher, and we can give you that phone number if you want to email here, or Ryan can put it on the chat line. It's 707-586-9558, 707-586-9558, arccopy.com. Scott Hartley is the publisher we're working with. He will give our listeners, if you mention Tamara Scott and Truth for Our Time, you can get the book for $15, which is a really great deal. But in this book, she mentions what you're talking about. Teachers in California have told her, their principals have told them they must clean out, get rid of all their old files. Only Common Core materials are allowed to remain. If not, they're in danger of punishment, possibly losing their jobs. So all those teachers, those seasoned teachers who have those books that they've had on the shelf, that they recognize a reading problem or they recognize a math problem, and they can go find that book that helped Johnny or helped Susie, no longer. Mm-hmm. This is so invasive. It's not just a Common Core curriculum. It is a teaching style, a regimented style. It is a script, as you said, Kara.
Mm-hmm.
Iowa Core is Common Core.
Thank you.
I don't care what, even you go to the Department of Education website, all the links are to Common Core. And they keep pushing the lie, oh, it's Iowa Core, not Common Core. Iowa Core is Common Core. In 2010, they basically stripped out everything in Iowa Core. The only thing that remained is the name, and inserted Common Core. Mm-hmm. So this is a lie, and you have to keep pushing back. And like you in my district, I got nowhere with the superintendent. And the teachers are afraid for their jobs. They don't want to be fired. We as a people need to stand for our children and our teachers, those teachers that are so good, the teachers that taught us, that put us where we are today. Those are the ones we need to fight for. If that means we have to roll over some of the people, some of the elites, some of the experts, and then that's what we need to do.
And so one of our chat lines saying, hey guys, several things claimed about SBG are actually not true. Please use accurate information about SBG in your conversation. Of course, they're not saying anything we said was incorrect. That's I don't know this individual. Rick Mormel is his name.
Rick Romelli?
Okay.
Yeah.
Rick Romelli is one of the leaders behind the standards-based grading movement.
But he doesn't say what we said was untrue, which is one of their best tactics, is say you're lying, but don't say what it was that was wrong.
Yeah, they'll never be able to describe, I asked somebody this morning, Ken O'Connor, who's another one of the leaders, do you know of anybody who you would admit understands standards-based grading and just simply disagrees, and they can't name anybody. They'll always say that if you don't like SBG, you just don't understand it. You just haven't implemented it right. Well, that's not the right answer. It's not about the implementation, because there's a good way to implement traditional grading too. There's bad ways to do it as well, but let's fix traditional grading. Let's make that better before we try to throw out everything.
One of our other comments is saying, mad woman. So teachers should just teach whatever they want. I don't think anybody here has said that. I don't think anybody here has suggested that in any way. But we all know good teachers. We all know teachers with style. And we certainly want to know, as I said, if somebody has figured out something that can help a student with a certain learning issue, why would we not allow them the freedom to do so? We need to go to break. When we come back, Heather, you talked to the Department of Education. You have that mind that allows you to read through all of those boring agreements and documents that apparently many of our elected officials may not have read through themselves. We're going to talk about that when we come back. We appreciate the conversation. I appreciate the comments on chat. This is dialogue. We need to have good dialogue. This is part of the process, the civil process, and we'll be respectful, and we'll talk about the issues, and we'll address them without attacking the people, and I appreciate that both ways going through this conversation. We'll be right back. I am Tamara Scott. This is Truth for Our Time, and we're powered by webcast1live.com.
Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places, especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart, and it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
All across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life. Change your relationships. Transform your world.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
All right, I am Tamara Scott. We are lighting up the lines. The chat line is full, and of course the phone line is available to you if you want to call in 855-244-0077, 855-244-0077. I want to come to your comment on what you found in which document was it you were looking at, Heather?
This was the SLDS, the State Longitudinal Data System grant, both the 2009 grant and 2012 grant that the state got from the federal government to build the data mining system here in Iowa.
We've been told we haven't gotten any money for Common Core. Is that not true?
Well, technically it's the data mining that we got money for.
So we did get some money.
Yes, we did get money, but because it's not Common Core, they can skirt.
Even though data collection mining is part of Common Core. It's the glue that holds it together.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So anyway, we got a total of $12 million to build this thing. And I was curious as exactly what kind of data it was gathering. So I sent multiple requests to the Department of Education, finally had to get the state ombudsman involved because they refused to answer me. 5 months later, I actually got a list of some of the things that they gather, as well as their intention for this system. What they're telling us is not true.
Okay, and I want you to read that list. And folks, I want you to know it wasn't just Heather who couldn't get answers. There is a video online. Lieutenant Governor Dan Forrester, and now that I say that, maybe it's Dan Forrest. Is he North Carolina, South Carolina? I can't remember. But he was trying to get information. Now here's the Lieutenant Governor trying to get information from his own Department of Education. The name is a little bit different in that state. When they finally answered him, I think it was thousands of sheets of paper they gave him, boxes, 12 boxes of information, thumb drives, just buried him in information.
Luckily, that didn't happen to me.
Yeah. So tell us your list.
So in addition to the regular stuff that they gather academic-wise, there were some other things that were concerning to me. They want to know if your child's in foster care, the parental rights status, and if they're on an IEP.
Why does the school need to know that?
If they're in day treatment or residential treatment center for alcohol, drug, or behavioral issues, in a youth shelter, detention center, foreign exchange program, awaiting trial, or receiving psychiatric treatment. If they've been incarcerated, expelled, or have behavioral issues. If a student is at risk for not meeting established goals of education, either academic, personal, social, career, or vocational. If they've received intervention service support for academic or behavioral issues. If they're on a free or reduced lunch. If they're homeless or unaccompanied homeless. If they're migrant, immigrant, or in English language instructional program. Now for our immigrants here, why do they need to know what level of language they're at? That's none of the government's business in my mind. If a student was transferred due to bullying or the victim of a violent event, if a student created an unsafe school situation by bullying, creating a violent event, or bringing a weapon to school. Now keep in mind, toy weapons are included as a weapon on this database. You could check off the type of weapon, and toy weapon is included.
So if a child brings
a toy weapon, it's marked in this database.
Are they expelled?
It's up to the school district. This is just a database.
And this database now stays with the child
their entire life, all the way through workforce. Also, if they're in Title I math or reading, which Title I is for underperforming students. So all this information is getting gathered about our children. And it's in a database, and it's held indefinitely. The Department of Education refused to tell me how long they plan to hold it and how long they plan to gather it. So far, they've gathered 8 years' worth on our children. I then asked them who exactly currently has access to this information. Currently, the Department of Education, Pearson Publishing, which is a curriculum
They
publisher.
helped write the test. So there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there. If I were a competing publisher, I would be a little disgusted that they helped write the test and now have an edge.
Now they have an edge. Department of Human Services, the University of Minnesota, Tritran, which I don't know what Tritran is. I think they're an academic research company. University of Iowa, American Institutes of Research, Iowa College Student Aid Commission, eScholar, Iowa State University, SAS, and I don't know what SAS is either. I couldn't find anything out about that. And then Iowa Workforce Development. Now the curious thing is we have this information going to Iowa Workforce Development. Why do these people need to have access to the information? So I'm trying to find out why. And I said, are you planning on expanding both the data gathering and who you share it with? And they said that there's no plans at this time. However, when you read the actual grant,
which I
did. Yes, I couldn't sleep one night, so I read it. On pages E39 through 40 of the 2012 Iowa SLDS application, now this is the federal grant, it states, the goal of the longitudinal data system is to provide a generic infrastructure that can be linked across institutional silos so that a potentially unlimited number of questions can be answered with accurate data. Issues and analysis that can be unforeseen today can be queried by efficient data mining if the requisite data was collected in any one of our systems. That means they're going to be linking multiple systems, not just this one. A preschool through work SLDS also allows for the addition of other agencies and outcomes such as the Correctional Division, Healthcare, and Social Services to create a robust resource for educators, administrators, policymakers, employers, and consumers. So their intent is to expand this way beyond where it is today.
So to expand on what Heather says, and what a lot of people do not understand, is what Common Core is. It's not only a standard. Standards are fine. A standard is, at the end of kindergarten, we want your child to be able to count from 1 to 100. That's a standard. What Common Core standards are very, very different is it all leads back to the Smarter Balance Consortia. So what Heather just said, it will take that times 10 for gathering the data from our students, and now the actual teachers will have to teach these standards a certain way to meet the Smarter Balance Consortia test. Anybody who can try to prove me different, they're completely wrong, because the states who have already implemented this, they're teaching to the test.
And this data mining follows your child forever. So that means if your child got in trouble, for whatever reason, kids get in trouble.
In second grade.
They can be naughty. They will follow them their entire life. All these people have access to this information.
And unfortunately, even if you change a new school district, put an incident or a situation behind you, now because of the data that they're collecting, they're going to tag that right back to your child. There'll be no fresh start.
And I know, and the problem is that I know they say, well, it's a secure database. Well, we've
Ask
been watching the
NSA about
news.
that.
We've been watching the news, and databases are not secure. And the problem
Ask Target shoppers about
exactly. The problem is that once this information gets out, it's out there forever. It could damage your child politically, economically, family. I mean, this has ramifications far beyond high school. And not only that, the Department of Education said we cannot opt out. Parents cannot opt out. Adult children cannot ask for this information to be deleted.
In 1964, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a federal law called the FERPA law. And what that did is public schools are able to gather some of this data, but it was never to be shared beyond that school district. And if it was, you had to have permission from the parents. It somehow came January of 2012, that entire law was undermined. So since January of 2012, the federal government has all of the information that every public school has on every single student. They no longer have to ask the parent.
And they can share that information
with anybody.
With anybody they choose.
A third party.
A
It doesn't
third
have
party.
to be government officials.
Does
It
not
could
have to be
a
government
private
official.
corporation, and that's the concern of many parents. Your kids may get funneled into jobs. The school may be heading them in a direction of a career path. It wouldn't be their choice, their grade, or their talent, but what corporations may need. That's the concern for some people. And they also may be held out of a job by something on their file. Could be of values. We just talked to the last show about values and being biased. Phil Robertson about lost his job because of his values. A child may never get a chance or a shot at a job because of their values and what they're going to have on this file with your kids. Jane Robbins has written about this extensively. You can find more information on American Principles Project. She's written about the data being the glue. Joy Pullman's written about the data collection being the glue. Joy Pullman is with the Heartland Institute. We'll gladly give you information, names, links to get your resources. We've opened the phone lines. Again, let me say the number, 877-244-0077, for anyone out there who would like to raise some concerns, or you've got a different take on the SBG, the standards-based grading. Gladly have you take part in the conversation. Any other points that some of you would like to make?
Real quick, I had the pleasure of meeting 14-year-old 8th grader from Missouri. Her name is Natalie Sales. She lived in Iowa in Council Bluffs, moved to Lake of the Ozarks about 3 years ago. Beginning of this year, Missouri has implemented Common Core. She was told by the teachers in August what a great thing it was. She laid in bed one night and said, "Man, this just does not sound right." She did her own research. The next morning presented her research to the school principal, which he allowed her to tell all the other teachers about it. That principal was fired by the superintendent. She continued to go on a quest and question all the teachers about Common Core. They all thought it was the best thing ever. Now this year alone, after implementation, she was told behind closed doors that the 8th grade teachers did take the Smarter Balance similar test. They all failed it. Her math teacher is no longer able to teach math. They all are told to go on sites called edmoto.com, studyislands.com. She has to have a password and a login information to be able to do her homework, and the YouTube videos show her. Behind closed doors, an English teacher handed out 2 pieces of paper and said, highlight everything you feel is important. This created a huge kind of what is going on in her mind. She said the teacher doesn't teach like that. After 20 minutes, the teacher said, "What'd you think of that exercise?" And everyone said, "We don't understand it. We don't get it." The teacher told her, "Welcome to the new education system. I have just been told I am no longer able to teach the way I've been teaching you up to date." So in 4 short months, the teachers went from questioning her, a 14-year-old, to now they're all telling her she was right. There are students going home. They cannot finish their work. Teachers can't teach to it. And 8th grade teachers are failing the test. And that is what's coming to Iowa.
I'm looking for a link. Jane Robbins used it in an interview I did with her a week or so ago about the testing for these students. We've heard, we're talking about standards-based grading, we're talking about the data collection, we're talking about how do we assess teachers' evaluations on the assessments of their students. Ask any pastor out there if they want to get to heaven on how their flock gets to heaven. Because no matter how you preach the word, you may have somebody in your congregation who just refuses to listen, won't pay attention. So is it fair to do that to teachers? I used to think yes, until I started learning more and more about this and how it changes what they teach our children to simply teaching our children to jump through hoops rather than to learn in the area of their gifting that might not be on that test. An Einstein would probably not, as Dr. Mary Burns says, succeed in this situation. And so we all were talking during one of the breaks. You don't need teacher evaluations to tell who your good teachers are. You know who you want your kids to have and don't have simply by what you see and the other kids who are learning or not learning. We're coming down to the close of the hour. What would any of you like to add to the conversation? Do you want to come back on some of these SBG comments on the chat line, Rick?
If I got time, I can. There's 2 things I'd like to talk about.
Yes,
One is,
please.
One of the things we've been talking about is for our group is the work habits and the skills that you learn that aren't necessarily school skills. They're not math. They're not science. It's work habits. It's about doing the extra work. We reached out to a bunch of professors at just regional college, so Iowa State, Iowa, Missouri, and we're getting feedback from them, just asking them, hey, we're questioning about standards-based grading. We ask questions like, do you allow retakes in your department? And some colleges do, and some teachers do. Some leave it up to the individual professors to do that. But by and large, most of them don't. Maybe one retake, but a lot of them don't allow retakes because they say that, like the pharmacist example, the pharmacist in real life needs to get it right the first time. They need to learn that at some point. When you present those kind of comments to the pro SBG advocates, they'll just say, "Well, that person just doesn't understand it. They're not a real teacher. They don't understand real instruction." They just dismiss any argument that they disagree with. That's just wrong. I mean, you got to understand where people are coming from. You got to, whether you agree with them or not, you have to acknowledge that, hey, you have a valid viewpoint. And these professors are seeing kids that don't know that they can't handle the fact that they can't do a retake. They're not prepared for college by following these practices. It just doesn't work. That's not true for everybody. Some of these kids are, but that's more because they learned their work ethic. That's the biggest thing, is what really teaches this work ethic that makes you successful. Rick Romelli on the chat line's talking about what SBG does is really, it improves communication to the student and to the parent about the progress of their student. Well, A, that depends on how good your implementation is, how bought into your teachers are to it. But B, it's really not about the grading practice that does that. It's more about the ability of a teacher to communicate. If a teacher's not going to communicate, the grading methodology they use to score your child really doesn't matter. If they're not going to tell you, if they're not going to reach out to the student, if they're not going to reach out to the parent, it doesn't really matter what type of grading methodology you're using. You have to choose to do good communication. It's about good communication. It's not about grading.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here, taking time out of your schedule, not just to be here today, but taking time out of your schedules away from your families to study this, to go to battle on this, because I'm sure some of you are getting pushback. And unfortunately, instead of being those servants that they've been elected to be, too often those in places of leadership, whether they're a bureaucrat in the office or an elected official, are not listening as well as they should be to us. So you out there in the audience, you have to take this as your call to action. Here in Iowa, we've got the caucus. And Heather, we just hardly have enough time to talk about it. But January 21st, they start at what time?
7.
And they can call their county parties to find out where their precinct locations will be.
Correct.
And it can take an hour, maybe 2, tops.
At the most, yes. And
Shouldn't take much more.
This is where you go, not to just to vote for a candidate, but to actually create the mission statement for the party, what we call the planks. You can go in there and say, this is what we stand for. And that's what rolls up from the grassroots. That's not decisions made by the higher ups of the party. Those are decisions made by you and I.
And so when you get politicians who aren't holding to your values, this is your covering, your accountability. This is what you say to them. This is our party platform. Hold to it. Or you have, this gives you your reason to stand. And so if you want more information on that, call either one of your state parties. If you want more information on this, how do they get a hold of you at the SBG group?
www.stopsbg.com.
Any of the rest of you? Groups that they can get a hold of you. We have the Stop Common Core, 2 Facebook pages, Stop Common Core. Both of them are good. One is more of a working group. One is more of just getting information out in front of people who just want to surf the information. That would be the orange one saying Stopping Common Core. The other Leslie Beck is helping with. We've had a great many of people in Iowa going to these NGSS meetings, going to these digging, as Heather has done on the contracts. And again, there are more issues we didn't even get to on the data collection. They're in past archives. You can go to Tamara Scott Live on YouTube and watch those. I don't do this because it makes friends. I do this because our kids are at stake. And Kara, do you want to squeeze something in before we go?
Yeah, really quick. Open up your kids' textbooks and see what they're learning, and then talk to the schools, because I don't even think that half the schools realize what they're actually teaching. And I think teachers are too afraid and need your support. And that's my concern. I mean, I want teachers to know that there are parents out there that'll back you. But parents, you got to take that first step and you got to dig in. You can't just use the schools to assume that your child's going to get a quality education anymore.
And if you're willing to allow your kids to get less of an education because of the excuse you don't think you know it or you don't want to take the time to do it, I won't tell you what I think of you as a parent. If you're going to have kids, take the responsibility and the privilege to raise them properly. It is your responsibility. It's not even a school's responsibility. It is yours. It's not your elected officials, and you will answer for it one day. Act like that because it's the truth. So don't submit yourself to an elected official that you elected, or to a school board official, or to a school teacher that your tax money pays to employ. You are the parent. You are the citizen. You are the voter. You are we, the people. The power rests with you. The decision is, will you take that sword out of the scabbard and use it? I am Tamara Scott. Be encouraged. Never be complacent.